looking at cell specialization. And cell specialization means that we are having cells that are different from each other and that they have a really particular job. So cell specialization creates different cells within one organism. So think about the difference between your skin cells and your heart cells, between your heart cells and the cells that make up your eye. Now, what we want to first think about or look at is a stem cell. Okay, a lot of us have heard about stem cell research and about people that argue for it and argue against it. But what is a stem cell? A stem cell is actually a single cell that can replicate itself to make more of the same cell, or it can differentiate. That means to specialize, to become a different type of cell with a particular job. So when we talk about cell specialization, we're really thinking about what is the cell's job going to be? What is it going to do within the organism, within the living thing? So we are on page 25 of our notes today, okay? And we're really focusing on how do these cells become different, or what are examples of how they specialize. So a multicellular organism, a large organism generally, is going to begin its life as an embryo. Okay, that's what you first start off as when you're developing, with many cells that have the same DNA and no job other than to grow. And so really when you start to develop, when the sperm and the egg join together to form this embryo, you're actually made up of a ball of cells, and a lot of those are going to be stem cells. So we do want to write that in there, stem cells. Now, when we look at the word embryo, in case this is the first time you've seen this, this is your first stage of development. First stage of development. Okay, this is what you start off as. And so as your cells start to develop, what you actually have to do is you actually have to increase in size. And after you increase in size, you're actually a ball of cells. You'll have to differentiate or become specialized so that the certain cells can become your head, certain cells can become your legs, certain cells can become your organs. So cells are specialized. This means that their structure fits their function. Cells throughout the organism are going to perform different jobs. So cell specialization really means that those cells do different jobs. Okay? The cells have different jobs. So for example here, again with our stem cells are undifferentiated cells. That means they can do anything. And when they're undifferentiated, they can actually be coaxed, or not tricked, but they can be kind of persuaded to turn into different types of cells, like neurons, your nerve cells that allow you to sense different things. They can become your blood cells, like your red blood cells that help transport oxygen. And they can even become things like your liver cells, which we've mentioned before, detoxify alcohol. They get rid of these bad products in your body. So the cells of multicellular organisms have the same DNA, but some of their genes are turned on and some are turned off. This allows the cell to be specialized. So basically you have this one single stem cell. It has very particular DNA in it that's unique to that organism. And parts of that DNA are going to be turned on. That is going to allow it to signal or communicate with other parts of your body, and that would become your neurons. Or maybe a little section is going to be turned on that tells it to carry oxygen, and that becomes your red blood cells. Or a little section's turned on to produce a lot of to produce a lot of lysosomes and a lot of endoplasmic reticulum to help you break down toxins like alcohol. Okay? So all the cells in your body have the same DNA in them, but the difference is what part of that DNA is turned on and what is turned off. Because the DNA in your eyes signals to make proteins that help you absorb light so you can see. But that gene to be able to absorb light for your eyes is not going to be turned on for your muscle cells that pump your heart. The muscle cells that pump your heart are going to need more mitochondria. So a lot of genes are going to be turned on to make more mitochondria. Now, adult organisms still have small reserves of stem cells in some areas of their body. Stem cells, when you're first developing as an embryo, you're just a ball of these undifferentiated cells, cells that can do and become anything. But as you get older, you start to have less and less of these stem cells. And so if you ever donate stem cells, they can actually get stem cells from your bone marrow, usually from your hip area, and they can actually extract some of that, okay? But when you start to, I guess eventually what you need to think of is as you become a larger organism, and as you become an older adult, now you've really used up a lot of those stem cells. Some of your organs, they don't replenish themselves. Not all of your cells replace themselves. And so some of them become really permanent structures in your body. But there are other cells, like red blood cells, that can be renewed every couple of weeks or every few months, okay? Your red blood cells are specialized. They have a specific protein in them called hemoglobin. Again, remember, proteins are made up of amino acids. They have a special shape that allows them to carry oxygen. Muscle cells will have lots of mitochondria in them because they need a ton of energy to contract, to move, just like in your heart. Okay? Now, sperm cells are also specialized to have a flagella, or actually a tail, to help them swim to the egg. And then some plant cells, because not only are animal cells differentiated, but so are all the other organisms. Some plants have xylem cells, and that actually helps them to carry water to transport. So here we're transporting oxygen, here we're transporting water, here we're transporting DNA really to the egg, and here we're involved in energy, so a little bit of respiration as well. And so there's your sternger coming back. Nerve cells are long and thin and have extensions to send messages, okay? So they can actually send some electrical or chemical messages as well. So these are just some types of cells that have differentiated, so they have special jobs. And all of this is going to allow you to function more efficiently. Now, differentiated cells require, because you have these differentiated cells, cells that do different jobs, they're going to have to collaborate, work together, and communicate. Okay? So it's really important, since we have all these different jobs, to work together. So just like how if you have a big business with 100 people working, all those 100 people have to talk back and forth, have to communicate, have to work together for your business to be the most successful. The same thing goes on in any organism's body, including our own. Now, in order for them to communicate, there's two ways that they can do this. First, there's short distance communication, and this means that cells are actually touching each other or have a very small distance between them where they can use chemical or electrical signals. Animal nerve cells are a good example of this because they can use electricity and chemical signals to control your body responses. Now, that electricity is not going to be the same as the one that's powering the light, but it's still an electrical charge that's occurring. So here's an example of our neuron, our nerve cell. Here's the beginning of the next cell that it's trying to communicate with, and it can actually send those little dots, which can represent our electrical signals, or are chemical signals like a hormone. And the last type of communication is long-distance communication. Now, long-distance communication means it's across long distances in the body. So this is going to require a longer signal, a better message, okay? And that's going to come in the form of long-lasting chemicals like hormones. Remember that hormones can be types of lipids, but they can also be types of proteins. When we talk about insulin, remember that insulin is a protein hormone. And this hormone is released by your pancreas, okay? By your pancreas, and has lots of effects throughout your whole body. It's controlling your sugar levels. So that's going to affect lots of other things. It's going to affect the amount of energy you have, okay? In this unit for your summary box, what I want you to do is try to, first of all, find one more example of cell specialization. Try to look it up. Try to think of the different parts or organs in your body and try to figure out how do they specialize. It'll be even better if you can figure out, does it have more of one type of organelle than another? And maybe that's how it's specialized. And then the second sentence I want you to write, why is it important? Okay, why is it so important that cells are specialized? Especially thinking about if we have this larger organism. Okay, so take your time looking back over your notes. Try to find one more example of cell specialization and summarize why is it so important that cells are specialized. And you can also think of cell communication in that. Why is that so important? Okay, and that's all for our